This will be an informational hearing on rural economic developments. And our first speaker is out.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Well, you've got a crowd today, I'll tell you.
I like it. And they're all supporters, right?
They better be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Allie Devine, and today I'm representing Kansas Farm Bureau and the Kansas Corn Growers Association. We wanted to take you just a few minutes and go give you the big picture of why we're here. First of all, Kansas Farm Bureau, Kansas Corn Growers, the Sunflower Electric Power Corporation, and the Northwest Kansas Economic Innovation Center. We had a coalition we formed almost 2 years ago. We did our own study of the barriers to growing rural agricultural interests, growing rural communities. And our study came back with like 41 recommendations. We were like, yeah, that's a lot. So we took two for this year: business development and housing. Those two things have repeatedly been shown to be the problems of why we can't grow in rural communities. So what we did is we followed very closely the Spark process. We know that there's a number of programs available through Spark that would perhaps enhance the availability of Kansas resources for support for rural housing. We also looked at everybody doing anything in rural housing, and frankly, we settled on the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, and I'm going to get the acronym right one of these times. And anyway, and today you have Ryan Vincent here. He oversees the programs if you have questions on those particular programs. So here's what I'm telling you. We're not asking to create anything new. There are a number of bills in the legislature today that would enhance rural development, a lot of different tools, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about any one specific bill. What we're asking for is a $50 million appropriation to the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, because they have the programs, they have the flexibility, they have the staff, and they have the capacity to deliver what any community needs. They work with bankers, they work with financials, they work with developers. We think they're the people to get the job done. Now you're going to say, Allie, where are we going to get the money? Well, it happens to be a good year, as you know. We are asking for a state general fund appropriation, and here's why. We looked at the requirements of Spark, and they have first $100 million that went into what is now called the BASE program. That program, if you're going to have housing, the way we understand it, has to be tied to an existing or near existing development. We're not going to have that piece. We don't think that over the long term, it's going to give us enough flexibility to get the assistance we need in rural Kansas. So first of all, we're not sure we're eligible. Secondly, we're not sure how far the strings of the federal government go with those monies. And until we get a clarity on it, I can't tell you that's the source that we need to turn to. So that why we went back to the ask about the state general fund is this. We know it's flexible. We know it's Kansas. We know that the money can be put into the housing corporation. It can stay there. It can move from year to year. And the likelihood of being swept back into the state coffers is low. So it becomes a sustainable, reliable source for housing in rural communities. So, Mr. Chairman, I told you I'd be quick. This is it. We got a lot of good people behind us. Claire's going to talk about the study. We have Josh Rowe available to answer some questions. We also, per your request, brought you this sheet, which is, I couldn't find a map with the new populations on it. So you'll find your county and you'll find your populations. The reason that's important is because when we start talking about the moderate income housing program, it's available to any county with 60,000 population or less. So you'll see where you stand. Any questions?
So committee, Allie, would you like to take questions now, or do you want to let everybody talk and do it with that?
Let's let everybody talk so we don't miss anybody's time. Okay, thank you.
Claire, you're on deck. Ready to go back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me a few minutes today to talk about some of the things we've been doing with our coalition. Allie mentioned that we have a report with some recommendations, and behind my testimony, you have summary sheets that highlight those recommendations. I am not going to talk about those. If you have questions about the report, or anything about the study, I would love to visit with you about it. What I want to talk about today is housing. And as Allie said, we are focused on business development because we know you need to have sites that are ready to go for business opportunities. We also need housing. And what you may not realize is perhaps it's a silver lining of the pandemic. We have had an incredible change in our rural communities. And the service territory of Sunflower Electric Power Corporation, which is who I work for, I don't think I said that. You know, we cover about most of the real estate in the western half of Kansas. And so part of my job is to be responsible for rural development efforts for Sunflower. And I work with economic development directors all the time. And the situation where rural housing is in very short supply in our rural communities is widespread. For a variety of reasons, because of the pandemic, people have moved. And it's everything from my parents are ailing, I need to move home, or I just want to move home. I want my kids to grow up in a small community, or I'm tired of living wherever. I want to be in a small town. There's all of that that's going on, which is great. We love new residents. The problem is we have excellent business development opportunities that now we don't have housing for. And yes, housing's been a problem in rural Kansas for decades. The Kansas Housing Study, which was completed and released in November, tells that story. And if you haven't looked at that study, I would encourage you to do so. There's excellent information there about the quality of housing in each county. And then it looks at each housing inventory on a regional basis. So one of our alliance partners is Kansas Corn, Josh Rowe. He is the vice president of research for the Kansas corn growers. He is supposed to be on WebEx today. He did some research on the results of the Kansas housing study. So if you think about the counties in Kansas that are eligible for the moderate income housing program, it's counties under 60,000. If you take a look at that housing stock, those counties, and ask yourself, what would it cost if we were going to replace 1% of the poor housing stock in those counties with a 1,200 square foot home? And his analysis is also behind my testimony. It would cost, if we did the KHRC match, which is $1 of moderate income housing that typically matches $6 of other investment, to replace 1% of poor housing stock in those counties would cost $105 million from the MIH. It would leverage $632 million. So the need is great. It's been substantiated by the study. And actually $50 million is probably just a good start to get us started. So you might ask, well, okay, but what about all of these? Are we really going to have the business development opportunities? Are there really the needed jobs out there? Several of the people that you're going to hear from are going to speak to specific needs in some specific communities, but I'd like to give you some extra examples. In Goodland, there's a tech company called Goodland Tech, who has been fortunate to have support from our technical school, Northwest Tech. They have about 35 employees that work out of an office in downtown Goodland on Main Street. They have an opportunity to expand. They bought another building, a bigger building on Main Street for their expansion. They need about 100 workers. And these are well-paying jobs. These are tech employees. They do software development and software training, but they need beds before they can hire those folks to go to work for them. In Phillips County, you've probably heard about Summit. Fire Bioenergy was purchased last year by Summit Agri-Energy, and they're converting that ethanol plant from making ethanol out of corn. They're going to make ethanol out of wheat, and they are building a wheat gluten plant. They're going to invest $200 million, and that's off their press release. They're going to need another 30 or 40 people. Smith County, Applequist Manufacturing is in need of another, I think, 65, and I might have those. But my point is, these are companies, these are good, solid companies that need workers now, and they're operating in communities where that stock isn't there. So we really appreciate your support for this appropriation. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity where we have need for the housing, we have the jobs to back it up, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions.
Claire, would you give your name and who you're with? Because I forgot to ask that.
Thank you. My name is Claire Guston. I'm the Vice President of External Affairs for Sunflower Electric Power Corporation.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Good job. Next on my list, I have Ross Bogle. Is he WebEx or here? Is he here? Ross, tell your name and I guess who you're with.
Thank you, Chairman Corbett. My name is Ross Bogle. I'm with a company called Heartland Housing Partners. For the last 10 years, we've developed housing in underserved markets across Kansas. We've done 24 RHID projects, Rural Housing Incentive District. We've done 9 moderate income housing projects across the state. But the reality is we could do so much more because there's not enough funding. Speak with communities all the time. Hey, can you come help us? Yes, I'd love to, but without more moderate income housing availability, the project's just not going to pencil. One of the interesting things is, most of us might be free market or all of us might be free market folks. Often you get, well, why is this working? The market should just work. After 10 years, I can't think of a scenario where the market is just going to work. Sometimes I mention to counties and cities, I'm just the bearer of the bad news. I wish it was easier. I wish we could make it work, but there is no scenario where we can make the equations work, the finances work. It doesn't work for a lot of reasons, but the simple reason, the simple fact is there aren't enough people swinging hammers. And what we have to do, there's a lot of funding, there's a lot of bills floating around the State House right now. What we have to do is create an environment where more people do want to swing hammers and they can make the economics work for themselves. I look at myself, once again, I go back to stating that I only do about 2 projects a year because that's all the capacity that the funding is available at the moment. And then there are others like me that could do more as well. Some things to point out that, and these could be facts that could be restated in communities across the state. But the typical hard cost on a lot right now, and that means if we were going to go out and develop a lot, and I don't mean buying the land, I don't mean the soft cost of having the engineering done. Typical hard cost right now is between $40,000 and $70,000 per lot. 70 may be a little low, even in some places. Coffeyville, I've been speaking with a banker down there. It's another place where if we had more funding, we've done a great drive around and kind of developed a plan. But there's not enough funding to get started. It's a town of 9,000. They did build 2 houses last year. for a town of 9,000. That to get that done, someone donated the land. A bank invested, didn't make any money on it, and they brought two builders out of Tulsa, which is over an hour away, to get that done. Iola has had 4 housing starts in the last 5 years, town of 7,000, while they've demolished 20 homes. There's a couple more stories. There's a banker in a small community that basically does 1 house a year and loses $30,000 just to get a house in his community every year, or that bank in his community every year. But there's also good stories. There's a story in your packet from Derek Lee, who did a project in Lindsborg, and it's been tremendously successful. It's a combination of rural housing incentive district and the moderate income housing, and it is they've 25 lots in the first year. Lindsborg has a couple of advantages that most communities in the state don't have. One, the median family income in Lindsborg is as high, or in McPherson County is probably as high as anywhere outside the metro. And two, it's close to Salina, where they have robust jobs at the moment. Here's the interesting thing is all those barriers I've mentioned, the smaller the town, the worse they get. And our inclination maybe, or at least when I was growing up, you think, oh, small towns, and I grew up in a small town, by the way, the cost should be less. The reality is the cost in rural communities are much, much more. And I would have to say on my behalf, I've got a couple projects in small towns right now. They're actually harder rather than easier, interestingly. So our company supports this bill. Or supports the efforts of the group putting it forward. But this is not a sunken hole. This is activity. $50 million, as they stated, should turn 6 times. The typical house, modest house, should create $9,000 in sales tax moving forward. So, and the biggest outcome is everywhere you go across the state, there's employers saying, hey, we desperately need places for people to live. Finally, I'll say just that we have a program in place, the Moderate Income Housing Grant. The folks at KHRC do a great job. You're going to hear from them later. It's in place. It's ready to go. It appears to be scalable from the outside looking in. And finally, in my testimony, I put some examples together, and I want to say a couple clarifiers there. In Southeast Kansas, where I grew up, is much less expensive than Southwest Kansas. So keep that in mind. And then when Molly asked me to testify, I did some testimony the other day. The numbers are different because she asked me to focus on rural. And when we talk about rural, it's just that much more expensive. I'd be glad to answer any questions about those examples. I do want to point out one thing. The last example is for a rental. The gap is so large in a rental that in most scenarios, I can't even imagine a way we can make it work. The example I used there, if you take a family that makes $50,000 and pay $900 rents, the gap's about $80,000 per unit. So I appreciate your attention today and stand for questions. All right, yeah, at the appropriate time.
We have written only from Derek Lee and Joanne Knight. Is there anybody here in this room that would like to speak on this, Mr. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. For the record, my name is Alex Orrell, Senior Vice President of Government Relations for the Kansas Bankers Association. I am appearing on behalf of the KBA. We represent 99% of the headquartered banks that operate in Kansas that employ more than 22,000 Kansans in our state that provide financial services in every single county in our state. I am proud to represent them today, and I do have some special guests with me. I do want to introduce them. You do have a packed house today. We have the 2022 Bank Leaders of Kansas program. Here today is our statewide leadership program. They are kicking off their year-long program with me. They have to spend 3 days with them, so the condolences to them. But they're getting a real live viewing of the legislature in process today. So thank you for allowing them to join your committee here today and allowing me to speak today on this effort. I do appreciate the previous conferees on their efforts on this and on housing specifically. Last year, at the direction of our chairman of our board, who is Mike Avey, CEO of Community State Bank in Coffeyville, Kansas, who Ross Vogel has worked very closely. He mentioned mentioned the banker in Coffeyville. That is the chairman of my board. He formed a housing and community development task force because we recognize that housing is a significant issue in our state. I also had the pleasure of serving on the technical committee over last year that helped form that statewide study that was released at the end of last year that came up with the goals and strategies for this legislature. I appreciate Ryan Vincent. I know he's in this room. He does a fantastic job on KHRC, and they do great work for our state. This effort for the $50 million appropriation for their corporation would definitely be put to good use. And I actually had a conversation with Mr. Vincent and talking about some of the ideas, what he would use this money for, and do believe it would be good. The Kansas Bankers Association recognizes that there is a shortage of attainable housing for both low income and moderate income Kansans. Shortage of quality housing is an undeniable barrier to economic growth and development for any community, whether it be rural or urban. Bankers are committed to seeing that everybody with the dream of home ownership has that opportunity. And at the direction of our members, we support policies that will encourage improvement of existing houses, generate new construction, and incentivize financial investment in the communities and for the customers that we serve in our communities. We do believe this is an effort that does that. We appreciate the efforts that do this. Any tool that can help in the toolbox on housing in our state, I think it was pretty clear. This first study we've had in 30 years. It's pretty clear. We need to do something. And anything we can do to help generate and incentivize those efforts, I think is a good thing for our state, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
So one of the questions I have for you, do you want to take some questions now, or does your team have to be somewhere else?
We do have to leave. So I will take questions, Mr. Chairman, if that would allow you to.
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's probably your question. I'm sure there are other bankers in the room that could probably chime in, but I'm wondering, I don't know, I've heard the 50 million and the build houses because we need them. What's, if I buy one of these houses and move to one of these communities to work for a company that's taking me there, what are the qualifications for loans on this, and what are the interest rates going to be, and are they subsidized with federal money, or is this going to be one of the uses for the state money that you're asking for?
Are you talking about the specifics, Representative, to the $50 million appropriation, or talking about the other pieces of legislation that is being considered by the legislature?
I don't know about the other pieces, so I'm asking you,
yes,
how you're going to, how as a purchaser of one of these homes, what would I go through? That would be probably a good way to
Sure.
say it.
So there are at least 4 bills that I know that are being at least vetted currently: Senate Bill 369, Senate Bill 375, Senate Bill 376, House Bill 2268, House Bill 2286, 68. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Representative. Those are all. One is an $18 million tax credit to incentivize building and construction in our state, to incentivize builders. You heard from Mr. Vogel that right now we don't have enough people swinging hammers. Not enough incentivization, specifically in the rural communities. Sure.
That's not, I don't want,
sure.
I've heard that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want to know if I buy,
Okay.
what do I have to go through to get into a house? Because when I was a young single mom and living in Oklahoma, I built a house, and I had it was a federal program for people like myself. I was going to pay 3% interest. I never moved in. I got a job and left, but we built the house under that program. So I qualified. How do you get a buyer in that house?
So the legislature actually passed a piece of legislation last year regarding the first-time homebuyer savings account legislation that is going to be enacted in July 1 of this year. That is a piece of legislation that's another tool in that. I think that is a major piece that is going to help incentivize people to stay here in Kansas. I'll talk specifically about my generation, about staying here in Kansas. We talk about population leaving. I think that's a tool here. Regarding interest rates, it depends on the institution you're working with. It really does. But they all work there's also secondary markets, and I am not a banker. I work for them, representative, and I'd love to connect you with your local institution in your area to speak specifically to the details of that. But I don't want to speak out of turn, and I don't want to speak incorrectly on the details.
Maybe this is just developing, but, and because of the other legislation that's all in the Senate, basically. But, so the 50 million would be used by the KHRC in the way they work. So it would be, I will ask them how they would use the money. That's what I really want to know, and how someone gets into a home, what it costs them to get into the
So
home.
my understanding, they have great programs for moderate income housing, down payment assistance, rental assistance, programs that are under the Kansas Housing Trust Fund that are currently working greatly right now. And this money could go to those programs.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your presentation. Just a real quick question. My brother was a banker, and when you said Community Reinvestment Act, his hair went up on the back of his neck like none other. CRA.
Did I mention CRA?
I mentioned CRA. And my question is, how does CRA work? Is that money that's available for some of these programs? What's the parameters? Is that a possibility, something we can tap into also?
This money would have nothing to do with CRA.
But that was the question. Can CRA money be used for this program?
Representative, I guess I don't fully understand the question, because CRA is a requirement under regulation that we have to abide by. This is a proposal regarding funding and appropriation to fund current programs under the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation.
So I'll word it a different way. Community Reinvestment Act funds are money the banks put back into the local community as a reinvestment.
Correct.
Is housing one of the options they can use for those funds?
I'm going to look to my bankers over here, and that is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, any other questions? Great job, Alex. Take your team, and if you stay here, you can go. But thank you all.
You're going to have to leave, Mr. Chairman, but I really appreciate the time. And you all see me around the Capitol. Please grab me if you have any more questions, but appreciate the time.
So, Allie, wait a minute. Does anybody else want to speak? Okay.
Two of us who
That's fine.
submitted written testimony. I hope copies were laid on the desk earlier. My name is Mike Pawson with Norton County Economic Development. Chairman and committee members, thank you so much for this opportunity. I guess it's my hope today, coming from Norton, to give you a bit of perspective from a very rural, very small community, because I think it's important. Again, I'm gracious. I'm an engineer by trade, my first career, so numbers are important to me. I live and die by numbers. So my testimony has a lot of numbers, and I'm not going to put anybody to sleep today with those numbers, but I want to hit a few highlights. The pandemic had made such an impact, and a couple of numbers here will highlight this. Ahead of the pandemic, we kicked off a county-wide housing study. Recently, I was a part of the statewide housing assessment team. I was the Northwest Kansas technical rep, and we see a lot of parallels between what we had done before the pandemic and after the pandemic, but there were several very interesting changes. Ahead of the pandemic in Norton County, for an example, we're a county of 6,000, a city, Norton, under 3,000. Basically, we're talking 16 or 1,700 houses. Ahead of the pandemic, we had over 120 houses on the market. We had about that many job vacancies. That could lead a person to have a false sense of security that you're in a good place with having houses on the market. Post-pandemic, we have in December, I'm going to talk about some workforce numbers in a minute, but December, when I raised some workforce numbers in Norton County, we had 12 to 14 houses on the market. Today, it's more like 5 to 10 houses on the market. I did the survey in the end of November, early December, I have 181 unfilled workforce vacancies in Norton County alone, believe it or not. That 181 vacancies, if I filled every one of them, if a busloads of the right people showed up and we filled those jobs, it could be $8 million salary added to Norton County. But how do I do that when I've got 8 houses on the market? It's not going to happen. We have so many good things in Norton County. We've launched, through our housing study, we launched a housing rehab program that is injecting over a 5-year period over $500,000 into raising the value of some of our existing housing stock. But that's 1 and 2 at a time here and there over a 5-year period. We've got 5 companies in Norton over the last year, over the last 12 months, who have applied for and are approved for either Department of Commerce HPIP projects or peak projects. Those 5 companies have committed to invest $6 million into Norton, Kansas, and create 38 new jobs, net new jobs. I don't know that they're going to be able to accomplish it in their time frame based on our housing availability. Well, the realtors report that change from 120 houses pre-pandemic to 10 houses post-pandemic, primarily a lot of people moving in from Front Range, early retirees cashing in, people who have this newfound thing, work from home, portable jobs. They consumed houses, and of course, we did have some people move in to take career opportunities in Norton. But my fear is, as the economic development director, these opportunities we have to grow with these 181 workforce vacancies. How do we do it? As the prior speaker spoke, it's an even higher hurdle. The build out cost of the infrastructure. I've got a very preliminary number that says in a site that we're looking at probably more in the $50,000 to $60,000 per lot range to put the infrastructure on so that we can build house one. And we already own the property. So we're in a rural, geographically displaced region where there's not been a lot of construction activity over the last 40 to 50 years. So we don't have the tradespeople, we don't have the contractors, we don't have the developers sitting in our backyard. But I think, I believe if we can create through some of these programs that we're talking about, especially MIH, if we could create some regional synergies of construction projects going on in some contiguous communities, we'll draw the tradespeople in. So I guess at this point, I want to say I concur with things that have been said prior speakers. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, come up with new legislation to do new things. I think we need to support the functions better that are in front of us, especially through KHRC. So with that, I'll stand down and wait for the Q&A period. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Representatives. I am Joanne Knight. I'm the Executive Director of the Dodge City Ford County Development Corporation. You have my testimony before you, but what I'd like to really tell you is Dodge City has really taken a full court press on trying to address our housing issues. We started in 2008, 2010. We started our own 501c3, the Community Housing Association of Dodge City, and we use the resources of KHRC and any other place that we can do, because we know in order to address our needs, we've got to tackle it on every level. And so we do a lot of abandoned housing. Some of that's through the MIH. We use the rural housing incentive districts. We built probably 700 homes in the last 7 or 8 years with that. We finished 100 homes this year. Last year, we're on slate to do about 200 homes this year. And then we have RHIDs in place to do about another 700 homes. But it takes time and it takes investment. And of course, the RHIDs are the local property taxes that are being put into those projects, that we had full support on the RHIDs and the NRPs from all of our taxing entities, because they were needing employees. At one time, the school district had 53 new school teachers living in basements. And so a big project that we have going on right now is we just announced about a $500 million cheese processing facility, Hillmar Cheese. They are going to start construction probably within the next 2 months. But the other effect of that, they have 270 employees, but you've got trucking industry, you've got all kinds of suppliers and things like that that need to come in. And the biggest impact is they need the capacity of 90,000 cows to fill this plant. Those dairies are not going to be most likely in Ford County. They are looking at the surrounding counties and other communities in Southwest Kansas. Those communities are going to have to address their housing needs. And that's going to be a huge challenge for them. I honestly think If we don't get some solid long-term infrastructure and a housing systems for them, it's going to be temporary housing. It's going to be mobile homes. It's going to be campers and things like that, which aren't a long-term fix for us. So if there is a way that we can get some extra appropriations to help rural communities to go in there and do that infrastructure at this time when we have the need for those permanent structures for the long term, it would be a huge economic impact to them. So in my testimony, I included the Hillmar press release. I also talked about some of the programs that we used. We have extremely good cooperation with whether it's USDA or Kansas Housing Resource Corporation with their programs. There's just not enough. We just actually, my housing coordinator walked in. We just got a CDBG award for some rehab. We also created a program where we work with the community college building trades students who at the time were building 2 sheds a year. There were 2 students in the class. We are building houses with them. We pay for everything for the house. The students do the construction. They get education from the contractors in town as well. And so every year we have a new house that those students have built. And we have 30 some students in that program now. And we have one at the high school and the community college level. So like I said, it's not that we're not trying. It just still isn't enough. And with this Hillmar project, as well as we just broke ground last week on a 217,000 square foot FedEx facility in Dodge. And we've got several others. Both of our beef processing plants are expanding. Just added a cold storage. I mean, wind farms. There's a ton of stuff going out there. But we have to address this housing issue. It just is the huge, big obstacle out there for us. Mm-hmm. For me?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I grew up out in Jetmore, so I know all about, my wife's from Dodge City.
Okay.
She was a little rowdy, but I tamed her down. So,
I probably know her because I grew up there too. So
yeah, well, she wasn't in jail or anything. It was just close. But anyway, so question. So living in Jetmore and some of those little towns around there, when I go and visit, I am so impressed at how clean those little towns are. They've done a really good job of maintaining those communities. I would have to think the opportunity for some housing and some people to live there and commuter, and maybe not everybody wants to live in Dodge City. They still have all those one-way streets that I struggle to remember.
Central is 2-way now. So, but yeah, and I concur with you. I live in Wright and my kids live in Spearville.
Yeah,
so,
Wright Co-op.
And we have great friends in Jetmore. But anyways, yeah, I think that's one of the great opportunities about Ford County is that you can go to the 6A school or there's several communities surrounding us that you have the opportunity to go to 1A school and live in a small town.
Well, so. I think one of the things you guys have done, you made that an area, not just about Dodge City. But we hear about the Cimarron and Jetmore and Spearville and Wright and Mineola and Fowler. And I want to commend you on that, but you've done a good job on that. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, we're definitely regional. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. And so part of my district is Ford is Ford County, the little town of Ford, Buckland, Spearville. And actually, we did a legislative coffee on Saturday, and Joe Newsey was there. Realtor Joe Newsey was there. And so, it's interesting to me that, we're in the middle of redistricting, and so we've lost all this population in Western Kansas. And yet it seems like there's just this housing crisis, and it's hard for me to wrap my brain around how we're losing all this population in Western Kansas, and yet everybody's talking about this housing crisis. And so I said something to Joe, and he goes, "It's really a deal here in Dodge City." It's exciting, some of the stuff that I'm reading in your letter. And so I appreciate your testimony because, in looking at my other counties, I have 8 counties out there, which, Dave, I'm so glad you love Jetmore. I love Jetmore. Oh, they do. I'm sure they do. But
yeah, I think that one of the things to respond to that, we have always argued that the census isn't capturing what it needs out there, just to be as a throw out number. I think they said we grew 487 people in 10 years. we built over 800 houses. So how did we just grow those? We only had 8 houses on the market a while back, and you'll go around these new developments and every one of the lots has a sold sign on it waiting for the construction to be done.
And I think that's, yeah, and I think that's where I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. And not that I don't believe you, because obviously I believe you and Joe and, you know, probably Ford County, Finney County, you know, my particular county. I don't know who gave us this population. I don't know, Josh, who had given us this, if this was part of somebody's testimony or just. Okay, perfect, Allie. Thank you for getting this. So Nest City, we lost over 13% population. I'm going to have to go back and rally the troops or something. I don't know. But anyway, I appreciate your testimony. And if there's something that I can do to help you in Ford County, please let me know. But I appreciate all the growth. Ford is the only one of my counties that grew, actually. So anyway, congratulations to you and the work your team's doing there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hypothetically, if I give you $1 million, how many dollars can you leverage with that?
I would say if we had $1 million in our community, probably at least 12 to 15 million easily. It just depends. I mean, it depends on what the program is and how we're able to use it. We have done a little bit different than some of the communities with our moderate income housing grant, which is why I really like it. We've focused that on abandoned housing and building, taking houses that need to be torn down or need to be moved. Even we actually received a donated house from Jetmore because the co-op was expanding there. So we've taken several houses and relocated and rebuilt them and filled infill lots. And so a portion of that goes to that, and the requirements are that on those that the people that buy it have that income. But as far as the infrastructure and stuff, it really depends on the development. And I don't have those numbers in front of me, so I can't tell you. But we've invested millions in housing there through the city, county, school district, and colleges, property taxes, and like I said, the neighborhood revitalization and stuff like that is rebates on it. But it takes a lot. And like I said, when you look at these small rural communities that are getting these dairies that haven't had a new house built there in a long time, they are desperate for those things. And if those communities are going to survive, they have to have new housing, new residents, and people. And there are people out there that want to live in that small town. I'm one of them. My 22-year-old just bought a house in Spearville. So, like I said, there's interest in that. So we just got to have the houses.
Yeah, well, that's my point, is that if these dollars were available, there's other dollars also available to just really double up on it. Yes, so, definitely. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have your name. I'm sorry.
Joanne.
Joanne, yes. Joanne, you're with a county organization?
Yes.
Are you with the county commission? I'm sorry.
We are a nonprofit, and we are a partnership between the city, Ford County, and any private businesses. We have about 90 members on our board.
Okay. One of the things I want to ask in this room, and I'll start with you, and somebody else might want to speak on it, but how many are you working with the Rural Opportunity Zones project in any way, or is anyone in the room doing that?
We just got qualified under the last legislation on it.
Did get qualified?
Yes, but we have not used it quite yet. We have a couple applicants that are interested, but the timing's just not there yet.
I've been a huge supporter of that program. That was one in that era that I supported, but it was growth where we need it, in ways to help people in small communities grow. And I'm really anxious to hear good reports on that if you have anything to share. But, I wondered, where do you start? Chicken and egg? I mean, if a company is coming, then you are going to have to build the houses. You're going to have people coming. So then you have people you can offer the tax credits and such to. But so just, do you have any experience or ideas how that's going to work for you?
I think that the recommendation is to have these fundings go through the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, who has a variety of programs. The ones I've used most is the MIH, and we have some developers that have used the low income tax credit program. And so having them with the expertise that they have in the variety of programs, what really makes that exciting to me is that each county can apply for what their needs are. And like I said, some of the MIH is used for down payment assistance or some infrastructure. We've always used it for abandoned houses and doing our abandoned housing program. But that's kind of up to each county to be able to do that. And that's what I like, is the flexibility from what Kansas Housing Resource Corporation offers.
I guess what I would do if I were in your place would be work with county commissioners and say, I've got this company coming, I'm building these houses. Can you offer those credits to these people that are going to come? I mean, to promote each other. But
Okay.
thank you. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Allie, is there anybody else here that would like to speak? Because this is a good time. Representative, you want the floor? Well, let's just open it up then for questions. Representative?
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question, and I don't know who wants to jump up and answer it, is about this population. And maybe, Allie, you want to answer it. But how is it that we've seen, I mean, I have over 7% decrease in population. They're wanting to redistrict. I think it's, and maybe you all will know, 4 seats out of the House. I mean, so how are we losing all this population in Kansas, and yet we're needing all of these houses? Help explain that to me, someone.
I want to first clarify. It took me a while to find this document. This is from the U.S. Census. If you look at the back page, which I have to admit to you, I was shocked to how hard it was to find. But when I did find it, that's why you have it in this format and not a map, as the chairman had requested, because literally it was difficult to find. I will tell you a little piece of information that the state of Kansas Office of the Budget produces a county by county document. I was not able to find that with the new data in it. So this literally was the most current I could find. So they can tell you why here in a minute. Okay. But remember, this is 10 years. And right. Some of the things that they're talking about are recent phenomena as people have discovered us. Discovered Kansas.
Sure. Thank you for putting this document together, because it's very interesting actually to look at this. You should have worked with our research department. They're phenomenal. I don't know if
we are private people. We're not legislators. That's one. And two, they weren't available on Sunday. So thank you.
Did you say that you actually get something done?
Pardon me?
You should have said actually you get something done.
I think our collective perspective in our community, in looking at the numbers that show we dropped in Norton County, we're a small county, small numbers. We've got, I think, a lot better transparency of where we are, in fact. But I think I've got to question the validity of the counts, especially during a shutdown and during a pandemic, when they were trying to go out, when people weren't answering doors and whatnot. I question accounts, because I know every one of my employers, my top 20 employers, that it comprise 90% of my employment, they're all bigger. I have no houses on the market when I did have houses on. So I intuitively, I think our population grew, but the census is telling me something different. So I wonder if the counting during a statewide shutdown caused some issues. I know people moved in, a large number of people moved in after the count stopped, because this migration, the shift of population from metro to rural is still ongoing.
That's very interesting perspective. I appreciate that. By the way, make sure you do whatever you need to keep that little Chinese restaurant on Main Street.
Let me help on your question real quick, if you don't mind. And it goes back to part of the testimony, and this is anecdotal. Iola, town of 7,000, 4 homes built in the last 5 years and 20 destroyed. So I think that's where we're probably, it's attrition. And that's pretty normal in a lot of communities, not just smaller communities. So I'm guessing that's probably where it comes from.
So I know we throw the word rural around a lot. What's your definition of rural when we talk about rural housing? Because you said you grew up in a small town. What does that mean? Because my small town and my friend Rishu's idea of a small town is a little bit different up here.
Statutorily, as you're trying to define it, is under 60,000. So all but eight communities, and that's how I think of it. I think of it in the terms of the moderate income housing program. So,
60,000.
yeah, which is not rural, right? I mean, that's not rural, but it's a tricky question. By the way, so and how you look at development in segments, how I look at Salina as opposed to how I look at your community would be completely different ways. Although generally speaking, the issues are the same. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And I know we're running out of time.
And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
My name is Ross Vogel with Heartland Housing Partners, and so we've done a good bit of developing across the state.
Since some of those developers, at least, I think when people talk about needing jobs, I'm like, if you're a handyman and can put in flooring and showers and those sort of things, or man, even if you're a plumber.
And led me right into where I'd hope you'd go, because I wanted to commend Dodge City. I've never worked in Dodge City, but I heard Joanna's stats before we started and how these programs can work. Dodge City's been the innovator for Rural Housing Incentive District and these programs. And she said they now have 4 developers who can actually make money doing it. Right. Here's the issue as I see it. Once again, I know we're out of time, and I should have said this in my testimony. One of the things we have to do is that I meet with builders all over the state. They all have gray hair like I do, and are a lot older than me, actually. And so we've got to get set the table for the new generation of builders and subcontractors to come in and start building. And without it, the economics just don't work. And I mentioned before, quite frankly, they don't work for what I do, because I can only do 2 projects a year. And I have to count on Ryan to say yes to both of them.
That's what our young ranchers feel like out there too. Economics just don't work. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry to jump up.
Oh, Allie?
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to clarify what is rural is very much dependent upon which statute you're looking at. For the MIH program, it's 60,000, a county with 60,000 population or less. If you're looking at the rural opportunity zones, it's 40,000 or less. And some of the bills that we have discussed, it can be as low as 10,000 or less. So it really depends upon the program and the definition. And I know Ryan may have some other comments on that, but I just want to make sure you knew it depends on the statute.
I've asked that a few times. Thank you for that clarification.
We're going to take a little more time because everybody's here. So, Representative, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, I'm going to ask you this question, Olive, because I think this is something you might be able to answer, and just along the same lines that I asked before. How much money can the organization leverage with this $50 million?
First of all, I guess I should introduce. You've heard KHRC and Kansas Housing bounced around a lot today. My name's Ryan Vincent. I'm Executive Director of Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, or KHRC. We are the state's housing arm, and this is Housing Week at the State House. I think this is my 5th committee I've talked to, and I know some of you are probably sick of hearing from me. But at the same time, I am traveling the state in my job. I'm in my 17th year at Kansas Housing, and I've never seen the stars align like they are right now, between a recognition of the importance of home and the recognition of all these housing partners that we've got to do something. The time is now. We've got the resources available on multiple fronts. Whether I'm hearing, and I don't know if it's just that I'm still hungry after lunch, but I'm hearing about Tony's Pizza expanding in Salina, and I'm hearing about Dairies expanding in Dodge City, and Russell Stover's expanding in Abilene and Iola. And I'll tell you, the Vincent boys are going to keep eating frozen pizzas, so we've got to find places for jobs to go home at night, and that's homes. And that's where we bring tools and resources to you all as policymakers, and to everyone in this room as stakeholders. And we administer about 18 different programs at our office. 99% of them are federally funded, and they're all wonderful. But going back to the representative's question, they are all limited to a certain income level. And there's a big group of Kansans that make too much to qualify for virtually all of the programs we administer, but they don't make enough to qualify or to meet the market needs, as you've heard about today. These are our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers, our healthcare workers. Luckily, we do have that MIH program that you've heard a lot about today. that program in particular leverages $6 for every $1 in state money. That's community foundation dollars. That's employer dollars. That's dollars from other sources of funding all over. And we're able to leverage it to build housing for that moderate income band of people. And it's the biggest resource that we have, even though it's only $2 million, because it is so flexible and responsive to your local needs of your constituents. So when I go to Neodesha and I meet with the town and they talk about how there's a benefactor that wants to start a program that allows free college for people that go through their public schools, we have a tool. So we were able to give a small MIH grant. We were able to leverage some other dollars, and we're able to now build some housing in conjunction, I believe, with the City of Independence for that community. And that's just one small model of what we can replicate statewide. But we've got to have the resource. And what we bring to the picture is we bring pencil-ready developments that we've had to deny for several years in a row. We have almost $10 million worth of applications from cities and counties in the last 2 years that met all of our threshold requirements, but we simply didn't have enough money to award. So when I think you as policymakers are interested in how you can invest limited dollars and invest them well. In my mind, you would want to look for programs that are in existence, that are successful, that have capacity and partners that are demonstrated. We have all of those for this program. We also have a universe of applications that we can move forward with. We also have a state housing trust fund, which is a flexible account that allows us to do loans and grants. We can do it in urban or rural areas, depending on what the funding constraints are that we get. We can couple them with our low-income housing development programs. We can couple them with homeowner rehab or weatherization resources. We can couple them with the moderate income, or we can create something new. And that's where the policy making comes in. We stand ready, we stand available, we stand appreciative of our partners in this room. And I'm happy to field any questions. I think I've maybe answered a bit more than you asked, Representative.
No, I appreciate the information, though. Thank you.
Real quick, just with him. So those monies that you're talking about, so I don't like any of Biden's money that he talks about with that infrastructure bill, but I'm just curious to know, is Kansas going to take part in any of that? Is any of that infrastructure money with that federal bill earmarked for any of this housing stuff?
It's a great question, Representative. We're trying to keep track of so many different sources of funding right now. The only funding we're getting through the infrastructure bill that just passed is some expanded weatherization dollars, which is great. We're able to go provide weatherization to homes and income eligible households to weatherize their homes so they're saving money month after month. And that's great. Unfortunately, it's just one little narrow need. And it's for income qualifying people for low income households, which we have many of, and we have never enough resource. That it doesn't do anything to address the moderate income. It doesn't do anything to address the lack of housing units or homes in our state. There is potential at the federal level. There's a whole lot of dollars right now that the Spark Task Force is allocating, and they're available, and we're having discussions with them through our housing partners about utilizing that resource, but they are federal dollars that are more limited. We're restricted as far as using some of those dollars for loans, as an example, because of the rules. That's where the state general fund dollars would prove more flexible, more responsive, and more readily available for us to meet immediate needs today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a real short comment. Part of the problem on the population numbers on that map, we've had consolidation out in the rural areas. We've had a lot of little towns that are just too small. And so that's where a lot of those losses are at. We have the regional centers, the county seats. They've all grown. The Nortons, they've grown. The Alameda, Long Island's probably not so much. And it's kind of that way throughout the state. Washington County, where I used to live, there's a lot of little towns up there. They've just become too small. And that's where you're seeing the loss in the county, but yet the county seats still look pretty viable. So that's kind of why the population maps, you have to understand how to read them.
And just to add on to that, Representative, what we see is that those smaller communities still have needs and they still have interest in growing. And we've got the one program that is actually doing housing development of a couple units at a time is MIH. We're able to serve Hoxie. We're able to serve some of these smaller communities that maybe haven't seen housing development in years. But it's because of the ability to close the gap. It's the ability to be flexible and be responsive to whatever the local needs are.
We're going to take one more question and then start wrapping this up. So, Representative.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for your presence today. You always help out a lot. I'm wondering about the lot development question and the cost of lot development. And I wonder if the new infrastructure bill from Washington would contribute to water, sewer, and infrastructure, high roads into these development areas that we're doing. And so I don't know if you know that yet, but I would be curious when you find that out, because so much of what President Biden was trying to do was clean up water and deliver clean water to homes. So I don't know if we can do new water, new lots with that money, but if you know, fine. If not, would you find out?
It's a great question, Representative. I'm guessing some of the people in the room may better be able to answer that specific one. I know the infrastructure bill is separate and it's wonderful. And I do think, like the water, that the hard utility infrastructure can be utilized. But I think Congress also recognized that they created a flexible pot of funds that the state and local governments are all getting that can be used for a whole variety of purposes. And housing development is a specific use that's eligible under the laws. And we need to make sure we're having conversations to our local governments, as well as the state Spark task force, just about the needs, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to really invest for tomorrow.
Well, I know Manhattan is in the middle of a housing study now. Are you involved in that at all?
We've partnered with them.
Okay.
I think I've provided them some information at least.
Well, I would guess they would need some help from you. Okay, we've been at this for a couple years, and then so we kind of know what's coming. I guess that lobbyist in Washington helps. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. I want to thank you all for your information. Allie, do you have anything else you want to say?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you. There's a lot of people that traveled and worked very hard to come today. Appreciate your time and indulgence of your time today. Thank you.
I would just say this. We've seen some budgets. Everybody sees the money. I'd ask for more. Yeah, anyway. So anyway, thanks. Yeah.
Right ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all for coming. Next on the agenda is Kansas Corporation Commission budget. Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As usual, I'll be presenting from the white document in front of you that says Kansas Corporation Commission. I'll give everyone just a second. Okay, so the first thing to know about the Kansas Corporation Commission budget is that it is entirely fee funded, so there is no state general fund money in this budget. On that front page, just in case you're not familiar with the Corporation Commission, and I know the agency will expand on this, but the KCC is responsible for regulating and overseeing the safety of public utilities, common carriers, motor carriers, and oil and gas producers, as well as involved in the state's energy policy. Turning the page to page 4 and 5. I just wanted to point out, since there was a couple of questions about how CURB receives its money yesterday, that these two pages analyze a couple of the KCC's larger fee funds. So this displays two of them, but it is not all of their fee funds, but it's a couple of their larger ones, in case you were wondering how they get there. Some of their fee funds, so the conservation fee fund, which starts on page 4, is funded by assessments and fees on the petroleum industry. And the Public Service Regulation Fund, which actually starts on page 3 but carries over onto page 4, is assessments on utilities. So I just wanted to point that out since that question came up yesterday with CURB. And now I'll move on to the budget that actually starts on page 6. On page 6, looking underneath the box at the agency estimate, the agency estimates revised fiscal year 2022 expenditures of $25.8 million all from special revenue funds. This is an increase of $1.6 million above the fiscal year 2022 approved amount. The majority of that increase is coming from item number 2, consulting fees. The 2021 legislature passed Senate sub for House Bill 2072, which allows for the securitization of utility assets to recover energy transition costs and help finance qualified extraordinary expenses during extreme weather events. The bill allows the KCC to designate a representative to oversee that process. But the KCC notes they currently don't have an in-house expertise to fulfill that role, so they would hire consultants, and that's causing an increase in their consulting fees for fiscal year 2022. Other expenditures for fiscal year 2022. Item number 3, the agency is starting the process of replacing its docket management system in fiscal year 2022. Turning the page to page 7. The agency is also estimating increased expenditures for well plugging. That's abandoned oil and well plugging. And finally, on page 7, the last thing on that page, the governor does concur with the agency's fiscal year 2022 revised estimate. And Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions on 2022 before I move on to fiscal year 2023.
Committee, any questions from Victoria? Carry 23, Victoria.
Fiscal year 2023 starts on page 9. On page 9, looking at the agency request underneath the box, the agency requests 2023 expenditures of $26.8 million. This is an increase of about $960,000 above the fiscal year 2022 revised estimate. The majority of that increase falls under item number 1, the docket management system. So I noted that the agency is starting that project in fiscal year 2022, but the majority of the project will take place in 2023, causing an increase compared to fiscal year 2022. Other expenditures for fiscal year 2023 are detailed in the following items. They include item number 2, filling vacant positions. Turning the page to page 10. On page 10, again, the agency is anticipating increased expenditures for well plugging. And finally, on page 10, the governor did concur with the agency's fiscal year 2023 request. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions on the KCC's budget.
Any questions? Representative?
I don't have any questions. I would just like to know how many of these FTEs of the 204 are currently filled.
Mr. Chairman, at the time that this budget was submitted, so in October, I can tell you that 45 were vacant. So yes, they may. The agency may have an updated number since October, but in October there was 45 vacancies.
Victoria, I have a question. It seems like every agency is trying to upgrade their IT stuff. Do you think it's feasible that the governor's asking everybody to kind of head towards one vendor so everybody can talk to each other and try to get one system? So I don't know that. We see this in every budget. You know what I'm saying? I'm wondering if the governor has an IT director, somebody trying to keep everybody together. So I don't know. Well, we were worked over pretty good. Anyway, any questions for Victoria? Great job, Victoria. Yeah. So next we have Dwight Keene, chair of the KCC.
Good afternoon, Chairman Corbett, members of the committee. I'm Dwight Keene. I am the chairman of the Kansas Corporation Commission. This afternoon, our intention here is to provide you with a brief informational overview of the commission's mission or charge, and also a review of recent commission activities. This afternoon, in providing that information to you, I'm joined by key members of our management team. This includes Jeff McClanahan, who is the Director of Utilities, Ryan Hoffman, who is the Director of the Conservation Division, Mike Hamey, who is the director of the Transportation Division. And we're also joined by Peter Barstad, who serves as, among his other duties, is our lobbyist and liaison with the legislature. We have provided you with a 7-page summary that I think you probably have before you. Included at the aft part of that is the performance-based budgeting information that I think would be of significance to you as well. I believe that most of you are really quite familiar with the structure of the Corporation Commission. We have 3 commissioners appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate, no more 2 of whom may be of the same political party. We serve staggered and overlapping 4-year terms. As Victoria just noted, and you're a tough act to follow, Victoria, she does a tremendous job for all of you. I know I've just told you the sun is hot, but she does a tremendous...
Trying to hire away from us now.
Well, it's a great idea, Mr. Chairman, actually. And she, for us being one of your customers here, she's very helpful with us across the board. As she indicated, we are fee funded, financed by assessments, registration fees, operating charges that are assessed to the regulated industries. And of course, we do not receive any general fund monies. The commission executes its mandated missions through 5 divisions. I'm over on page 4, and I'm skipping around a little bit in the interest of time. The first of these is the administrative division. That somewhat speaks for itself. This includes the office of the commission and various supporting functions. And then we have the 4 divisions through which the substantive missions of the commission are executed. These 4 divisions regulate several industries that are critical to the Kansas economy, including natural gas distribution utilities, electric utilities with the exclusion of electric co-ops. We do not regulate the co-ops. It also includes transportation and motor carrier regulation, the regulation of the Kansas oil and gas industry. Pipeline safety is a major concern of ours as we coordinate that effort with the federal agency of PHMSA. In addition, and to a very limited extent, we do have some telephone and telecommunications regulation as well. I want to very briefly review for you the missions of each of these 4 substantive divisions, and I'll do this quite succinctly. In the utilities matters, our ongoing commitment is to strive to balance consumer and utility interests in a manner that ensures sufficient and efficient service at reasonable rates. In conservation matters, our preeminent goal is environmental protection, as we support regulatory policies that protect correlative rights, prevent waste, and encourage the responsible exploration, development, and production of the state's valuable oil and gas resources. All of this while simultaneously ensuring the protection of the state's important freshwater resources. In transportation and motor carrier matters, we regulate the commercial trucking industry in a manner that enhances maximum public safety while also enabling essential commerce that relies upon and utilizes these important commercial trucking resources. And in the energy division, we focus on important energy conservation, energy efficiency, and energy education undertakings. In carrying out all of these responsibilities and activities, the Commission is committed to the professional, apolitical, nonpartisan execution of all KCC missions, duties, and responsibilities. Furthermore, in all administrative, quasi-judicial, and rate proceedings before the Commission, we are committed to the rendition of impartial justice. In essence, this means that the results of what the Commission does are driven by the facts and the weight of the evidence and are not driven by political considerations or preconceived notions or conclusions. All principal Commission duties and responsibilities are executed by our 161 FTE employees. I'll digress just a little bit. You had a great question there, and to answer it rather specifically, my most up-to-date information as of yesterday morning is that we have we have 205 FTE positions. So we have 44 vacancies that will give us the current TO&E of 161. It was a great question. I appreciate that too. obviously to us, our staff is our most important resource. These are the people through which we execute these really missions that are critical and essential to the safety and welfare of all Kansans. We strive in that effort to provide the highest levels of public service that our fellow Kansans have a right to expect. If you turn to page 7 of the handout, I think you can see there is a somewhat succinct portrayal of recent commission activity. The top half deals with calendar 21. The, the lower half deals with fiscal 21. As indicated in the footnote, all fines that are assessed by the commission go directly to the general fund. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my overview comments, and we stand ready to answer your questions.
Committee, questions? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. First of all, I love fee-funded agencies. I just love that. I love when government agencies can sustain themselves. So thank you so much for that. It seems that you do you run a tight ship over there. You do a good job. Appreciate that.
We try to.
Good.
We try to be a steward of these fee-funded monies, frankly, as though they were general fund monies. We try to be careful about how we spend our funds.
You know what? I also love somebody who works for government who is mindful of zeros and commas. So thank you for that. I wanted to compliment your agency this summer. So this is my comment. I had an issue. Wasn't even my constituent. It was over in Meade County, but he came to me through a cattle association, and there was a pipeline company over there that was digging and had kicked up some blackleg in the soil, and this producer was illiterate, couldn't read or write, and so had trusted the landman or whomever that had come and talked to him about this project. They were putting in a big pipeline, and they'd taken advantage of him. And livestock were dying, and he had a herd of domestic elk on his land as well. And so I contacted the KCC. I don't remember who it was in your office. I talked to a couple different folks, but they were very, very responsive in helping me go to bat with that pipeline company to the point where we were able to really save the livestock, and this particular oil or pipeline company had to come in with, I don't know the details, I'm assuming a bunch of money and some fence, and so I just wanted to say thank you, because your staff was very responsive to me in help. It was you said FEMSA, I think you had mentioned. So nobody knew who was in charge of what, and they helped me kind of figure that out, and so thank you for that. Please compliment your staff for me.
I will indeed. Well, thank you very much for taking the time in these proceedings to tell us of this. That's very nice to know. Pipeline safety is a division of the Utilities Division. Leo Hanos is the individual there who it was probably Leo Hanos. Oh, he's first rate. We're trying our best not to allow him to retire. He's been with the agency for a long time. He knows pipelines like the back of his hand. He really is quite helpful. For the most part on pipelines, we have a staff. We have a staff of field inspectors who are charged with the responsibility of pipeline safety, trying to ensure pipeline safety, even on some of these interstate lines. It's a delegated responsibility that we have from PHMSA. We are accountable annually to PHMSA for what we do in that area, and we always, I think, receive high grades. And I would credit that to Leo and the staff, Suzanne as well. We have a tremendous staff there.
I think Leo was a bit nervous when we first had the issue. I mean, a domesticated elk herd in Southwest Kansas, blackleg. I mean, there were a lot of moving pieces to it, but we were finally able to reach a resolution, and we wouldn't have been able to do that without the pressure of the KCC going to bat for us at the federal level also. I mean, there were a lot of different, probably didn't hurt that I threatened to go to the media as well and expose them to the rest of those farmers out there. But I do appreciate your staff. It was very helpful. So, and the good news is that producer is doing well. So we're thankful for that. Yeah.
Thank you for your compliment, and I will pass it on.
Just a question. So, do you do any regulating on propane issues or industry at all? Like the people who, in a real part of the state, use a lot of that.
Jeff?
Jeff McClanahan, I'm the director of the Utilities Division. We do not. We are charged with Kansas Department of Emergency Management, Emergency Support Function 12. So we have contact information for propane-related providers, etc., but we do not regulate propane in any way.
Okay, one more question. Go ahead.
If I could add just a footnote to that. Mike, please. We do regulate the people who deliver propane.
That's right. Yeah, Mike Hamey, I'm the transportation director for the KCC. We recently worked with the Highway Patrol through with Greg Knoll, propane marketers, on the recent declaration. We were able to get Kansas added to that federal declaration to allow drivers to work more hours to get the propane where they needed it to go.
That's good. Okay. One more question for you, sir. So, and maybe I'm asking the wrong person, but I've been told by many up here that Kansas has some of the highest electric rates compared to our surrounding states. Any comment? You know anything about it? I'm just asking.
We're sensitive to the fact that we're concerned about Kansas being regionally competitive in rates. We are sensitive to that fact. The question that you ask is really quite a complicated one to try to answer. We've had rate studies now, 2 of them authorized by the legislature. In advance of that rate study, we had one of our own that was prepared in late 2018.
And the reason I'm saying that, I mean, in the committees that I am in, I've heard mentioned that a lot of companies that need electrical power and lots of it, it's so much cheaper in Oklahoma than Kansas. That was one of their turning signals to move out. And I hate to see anybody leave this state if there's anything that we can do to keep them here.
That's a great point, Representative Corbett. If I can address that rather directly by turning back to the 2018 rate study that we performed internally in advance of those that were commissioned by the legislature. We indicated, and Jeff, I'd be happy to have you add to this too in a more informed way, to be sure, but we indicated in that study, one of the conclusions we had was that our rates were marginally higher than those of some of the surrounding states. And one of the reasons, and Oklahoma fits within this category, why that was the case is that our predecessors on the commission had, over the course of roughly the last 10 to 15 years, had been very diligent in trying to, as rate case proceedings came before them, to ensure that there was compliance with the Clean Air Act and some of the federal laws that regulated environment. Oklahoma was less diligent. I'll put it that way. Okay. And as a result, they were focused more on rates than they were on the totality of the delivery system behind it. In fact, I'm told, this is anecdotal too, so please accept it for what it is here, that in Oklahoma, some of the serious problems that they have going forward is the fact that they have focused so much on keeping rates low, and they haven't invested enough in the infrastructure and in the capital expenditures that are necessary to keep their systems upgraded, that now they're behind a curve they need to try to get in front of. So it could be that there's a makeup time of some sort there. Jeff, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, quickly. So one of the key aspects of why Oklahoma's rates are really some of the lowest in the nation, not just in the region, is they are heavily weighted towards natural gas generation. And so with the low prices that we had seen pre-February of last year, that made them highly competitive, right? And to the chair's comment, they didn't do any environmental retrofits on their existing coal fleet. Their natural gas fleet is also about half of it is at least 40 to 60 years old. So it's aging infrastructure. They are pushing towards new renewable energy, and so they've got capital expenses related to that. But now, post Winter Storm Uri, we're currently seeing natural gas prices in the $4, $5, $6 range. It's up and down, as you know. That makes them certainly less competitive. Offsetting that, though, is and one thing we pointed out in our studies is if you have population growth and industry growth, those increased sales offset the increased capex cost. And Oklahoma, frankly, is just growing. Oklahoma City and Tulsa area are high growth areas. They're still forecasting around, I think, 2% growth in their areas. And so that helps mitigate some of it. But we do believe that everything else being equal, you never know what can happen. But we think the gap is going to start closing over the next 5 years.
Thank you, guys. You did a great job. And does anybody have any more questions? Oh, Mr. Garber.
I don't have a question. I do have a comment, though. It bothers people in my district when they see Evergy and these other energy companies bragging about how much money they donated to people, knowing that the money comes out of their pocket. That's just something I wanted to share with you, and I don't know if you want to pass it on to anybody or not, but that bothers me.
I'm going to be very delicate, but I will respond to that in this way. I believe that in the Senate, I believe Senator Francisco has just introduced legislation to directly address your concern. I don't consider myself to be a politician.
So before you decide to be in politics, I'd like to thank you for coming, and you all did a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, we appreciate the ability to work with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And this will close the hearing, and have a good day tomorrow.